Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. Johanni, everything good with you?
All good, all good. Not on fire. That's good.
Good, yeah. I feel bad for everybody in those guys in France and Spain. It's really, really tough times. So listen, we wanted to do a quick episode about some things we've been working on. Just a little kind of show and tell of a couple of things that we've been busy with. One of them I know that you've been busy with relates to one of the process frameworks we've been building. And it's a kind of LLM friendly process framework that's very product focused. Why don't I just hand over to you and you can tell us a little bit about the framework and then show us what you've been building.
That's a good idea. Thanks. A seed framework is something we actually have a couple of videos already on the website, but to give a very quick overview, the idea is to kind of step back from the traditional software engineering processes and think how we can get the most value out of these pretty powerful tools that are now available to us. And in my opinion, LLMs are going to change much more than just writing code faster. If we go and just do the same things we always done with LLMs, we're just going to create much more code that is poor quality and does the wrong thing. My approach on software has always been that it's much more important to build the right thing and build it in a way that users know how to use it instead of just building the right code. So it might be rubbing some people the wrong way, but the actually code that is perfect that nobody knows how to use is useless in my opinion. I'm a very much a product and user interface focused person. If you watch my conference talks from last decade, I always talk about usability. I very rarely talk about code quality. Not saying code quality is not important, it becomes important once we know what we are building. Seed framework is trying to solve this problem. Instead of relying on agile methodologies like Scrum, in my opinion, Scrum is a tool that came to be because we are bad at writing specifications. So we had to start to iterate to understand what we're actually building. Software is evolving when we are building software and so on. So Scrum became there as a tool to iterate and not having to define the whole software at the beginning. But now LLMs give us an interesting tool to create prototypes that are much more than the traditional sense prototype. So when we start building a piece of software, we can actually go to a running software with real data and real business logic very, very quickly and evaluate what we actually want. Humans and stakeholders and clients are very good at telling what they don't want, but very bad at telling what they do want. So I've been talking in multiple conferences already about user interface designing in a way that we go to code very quickly so people can actually look at the thing and point the thing. Early phase of the project. But with these tools, we can go to even a step beyond. We can have properly running software. So I've been building this idea of seed framework together with our colleagues at Snap Technology and basically breaking software engineering process into two phases where we talk. The first part is called functional discovery with results into piece of seed software. And effectively we write code very quickly, completely ignoring quality, safety, security, and assess building the actual software, connecting to real backend APIs where possible, and using the right business logic where possible. And then using that piece of software to communicate and understand what the actual software should be built, and then use that as a specification and then building it properly. Now we might lean on LLMs when we build it properly, or we might just write code in traditional way. It depends if it's a banking application or a random to-do list, right?
Right. So the way I've been thinking about it, Johanni, is that we're kind of in this 80-20, this Pareto principle world where anybody defining software can get to the 80%. And I wouldn't say easy, but it's achievable to get to 80% of what you want. Mm-hmm. The remaining 20% is really hard to define because you get into the things where you almost intuitively understand something, or there's context which you didn't even know it is context because you do it every day, or whatever, right? Or maybe it's the team next door has the context and you didn't know about that.
Yeah.
So this missing 20...
Yeah, especially domain experts are so good at what they do that they fail to communicate the 20% completely. And I used an example in another video I made about the seed framework is a wireframe prototype is a kind of a hollow shell that two people in the room look at the same thing and agree that this is what they want to build, but actually what they agreed is two different things because they imagine the rest of the system.
Right. That's it. So basically what we're trying to solve here is that 20%. How do we close the gap between the 80% and the 100%? I'm guessing we're never, well, I don't know whether we're going to get to the 100%. I guess humans are always going to create some misunderstanding somewhere along the line. But what do we think? We're going to close another by 10% or something? We're going to get to 95% of what somebody wants this way, right?
The way I see it, it depends if you 100% is the deployed software, the 100% is the dream goal of somebody. What this approach, in my opinion, results to is that we get to, in a traditional Scrum way, we iterate and iterate and iterate. And in 2 years, we're going to be deploying something that is a bit of a compromise. But that's the software that everybody has gotten their feedback in and kind of explained what they don't want, and things have been changing over the last 2 years. We can condense that into 2 weeks effectively. So we can get the same feedback that traditional ways took 2 years. We can now get it in 2 weeks. And I think it also strengthens to the quality of the end product, because we know that engineers are very good at building software if they know what they're building. The thing that breaks, I've been against TDD, for example, quality control, because in my opinion, when we start building, we don't know what we are building, and there's going to be people who disagree with that. But I never use TDD for that reason. However, if we are knowing what we are building, TDD is a fantastic way of making sure there's quality gates of whatever we build. And this kind of approach, when we actually know what we are building, enables all these tools that we've been evolving in our last 20 years also become into play when we build the software. So we not only do we end up quickly to a place where we want to go, but we also enable tools that haven't been really viable before.
I would also say that by focusing on figuring out the right thing, making sure everybody understands 100% what we're building, the way you build is also then not fixed. So you might have teams who are like, hey, we do everything still by hand, and we don't like to do any LLM development for production software. And I think that fits with this seed framework, because the use of LLMs is basically to speed up the bit where we don't know and the bit where we're happy to throw away the things we get wrong. Whereas the production piece, people might want to go slower. TDD, like you're saying, much more handcrafted, a lot of review. They might also want to use LLMs, maybe, but it's not required that AI becomes the end-to-end part of building a product, right?
Exactly. At the same time, when I thought, let's dive into an example. And we've been building tooling around the seed framework, trying to help the process become manageable and easy and fun. I personally hate Jira. When Jira kills all productivity and creativity in me. So what I don't want to do is to create a Jira template for seed framework. Instead, I want to create software that is laser focused on solving this problem. The processes still need, when there's multiple people involved, processes still need a central working hub. Plus they need a guidance of what needs to happen next. What are the information nuggets we need to gather before we can understand what we're going to be building? So let me show you. This is a very early version of the software that we've been using. A lot of development is still happening, but this is effectively a tool for the seed framework and taking the abstract sounding process into concrete steps of building software. It's an easy way to think about it. It's just a queue of to-do items, effectively say, okay, here's the next thing you need to do. Here's the team you need, and just try to put structure around it. And try to keep things optional, jumping around and going in the order what you want, and not kind of making it too constrained. It's meant to help you. It's not meant to tie you down. This is a piece of software I built for myself as an example of doing things. It's called Half Baked. So here's basically the project goal is defined. I often have these thoughts, and okay, well, these are the ideas I would like to build. I would like to do this thing, but the ideas are always super half baked. So if I take down Evernote, it feels completely overwhelming and overkill to start an Evernote note. I've been using in the past Google Keep, but I kind of don't want to use Google anymore. There's a couple of open source note-taking software as well, but they always feel like this too much. This is a half-baked idea. It's not really something that I want to. Just want to have it very quickly taken down, or just kind of jotted down as a note. That's something that I don't lose, but that's something that is too difficult to do. So this is kind of the overarching description of the project. The way the seed framework kind of works is that you can have different type of projects. You have different type of queues of work to be done. You and I talked something about already, including product thinking more into this way. This is very much software definition process for now, but we have included things here like ways to collaboratively figure out what is the project goal. That's the first thing you need to do. You need to make sure that team that is in the same room or virtual room is aligned to what we're actually doing. The best way to do it is just to write it down.
This, Johanni, is surprising how often this is not understood across a team. I mean, to an extreme example, I did a project some years ago, and this project has been running in various different sort of organizational sort of structures, have been running for like 3 or 4 years, and it was getting kind of towards the end where something could actually get released. And I remember having a meeting with one of the product managers who showed me the original pitch deck for the project, internal pitch deck, and it had nothing to do with what everybody else had understood was the goal of the project. And I was left sitting there thinking, how could there be this big gap? And I think this is the thing, we don't talk about what problem are we solving, and we also don't talk about the users of the software during we think about the production process too much.
Which is a good segue to the next step here. Again, this is something that I've been spending probably now 25 years talking about, bringing users into the software design process. So if you go to a design agency, this is probably more natural that they kind of involve them. Although by my experience, even design agencies tend to ignore. They tend to think they know, and they don't really write things down. They just go like, well, I understand design, so I'm the user. Again, big plus, not everybody, but some of them, by my experience, do that. So here again, I've included things that I'm really big fan of. This is the persona and user goal definitions from Alan Cooper, who's the father of Visual Basics, and been doing this stuff for a long time. So while there's some controversy about personas use and so on in the design community, to me it's a very powerful communication tool. So here again, I'm trying to solve a communication problem, not a technical problem. And a persona is a very kind of easy way for people to understand who are the users. So once you figure out the overarching goal of the project, you're going to figure out who you're building the software for. The answer, everybody, means nobody. You can't build for everybody. You simply have to understand what is the target audience you will have. You want everybody to use your software, that's a different question. But who it is built for, you have to understand what the users are, what their kind of needs are, what their pain points and so on are. Otherwise, you can't even start designing software.
I have a bit of a theory why personas are not that well liked. I mean, they're good reasons. They become stale. They sort of drift away from the reality of who your customers are. So they're good reasons, but those are more implementation problems. I think that whenever you look at personas, you have to ask uncomfortable questions. And it's always easier to build something based on assumptions than to base them on known information, or facts is too strong. But to have some sort of validation of your idea is uncomfortable and actually sometimes difficult to achieve. So that's why I think a lot of people have abandoned personas, because they'd rather not reveal the fact that they're building something based on guesswork.
Yeah. Yep, I think that might be it. A persona is a concrete example of an archetype. That's the easiest way to describe what it is. So people who don't know what it is, and we kind of have a helping tool for you to do them. Because you do actually give persona a name, and you even give them a face. These are publicly available free photos. I haven't stolen anything. So you give them a name and a face, but it has to be somebody you do not know. So while personas in reality, when you build software for yourself or people you know, they quite often are based on real people. You know who this persona is. I remember when we were building Social Steps, an app a long time ago, there was a persona of me and there was Jose, the two developers of the platform, but they just weren't called us. The reason is also very clear. You don't want to make them somebody you know, because you're going to be talking about these personas as if they were real people, and you don't want to be talking about real people. So you should be able to say, in this case, is Mira able to understand this thing here? And you can't say that for a real person, right? So in this case, I've created two personas. Reality, you should do more. It's kind of important to have a little bit understanding more of who these people are. They also kind of capture a little bit their pain points in the context of the project. And you write descriptions that are related to the project. So you don't need to tell how many children they have if there's nothing to do with children in the project, unless that kind of implies how busy they are or something like that. So if you don't need to, it's not a role-playing character you're creating. So keep that in mind. And in persona creation as well, it's actually quite good to add ignored personas as well. Say, okay, here's the kind of the counter persona, effectively saying this is this is a person we don't care about. We know this exists. With Lee, the golf application we were building, there was a certain professional golfer. I say, okay, well, we don't build this for professional golfers. So we created a professional golfer persona and put it in ignored. So now it's very clear to everybody that this is not for pro golfers. This is for hobbyist golfers. And this tells a lot. It quite often tells more than the. And in this tool, you can just then prioritize the personas. Usually it's good to have secondary, primary to understand, okay, where the really is things. And the goal for this tool is a breakdown. Another thing that I really dislike is when we are doing a virtual meeting or a face-to-face meeting, everybody's staring at the one person who's writing. And with this tool, everybody can just feed in their own stuff and in their own head for a while, but we're still working on the same pool. And then we can prioritize things together. We can look at the screen together once they are there and then track them around and agree who the people are that we're building a project for.
Well, I think also the reality is that writing a persona is a little bit more difficult than it sounds. It takes some iteration, takes some thought, and you can't just sit in a workshop and throw out personas and done. It's actually, you want to take some time and do it asynchronously, I would say.
Recommend asynchronous way for this. Say, okay, we're going to start the project next week. Let's start thinking who we're building for, and everybody type a couple of personas in when you have a kind of idea. If they turn out to be the same people, that's fine. We can delete them. Okay, this is already covered. Let's copy this here. And that's fine. That's no problem. So the part of the collaborative part here is to arrange and agree, not to create.
So what I've been trying to do, and I know this is I'm coming at things from a slightly different direction sometimes to you, Juhani, but what I've been interested in trying to figure out is how to triangulate enough signals that say my persona actually seems pretty realistic. So another problem that we have in the industry is that we're so busy in our offices and in the kind of day-to-day that we don't get out into the field very much to understand the customer. And we need to have some linkage to data from the, either community, forums, interviews, whatever it is, to say, well, actually this imagination.
That's for sure. If you just sit in a room and invent people, you're going to invent a product. Sometimes it's fine if you're doing it for yourself. it's okay, it's going to work. But when you're doing it in a domain you do not know, it needs to come from real understanding. You're absolutely right. Now, okay, well, now we figure out who we are building for. Now we actually need to build what the project does. Like, what does the software we're building, what does it actually do? And here is the biggest downfall of tech people starting to think about products. I see this a lot in open source, and I'd say that's a big weakness in open source software projects at the moment, where people immediately jump to think about features. You start talking about software with your friends or in the community, and they start shooting out feature ideas immediately. Say, oh, this feature cool. This I seen this in this app. Look at this app. This has cool features. It's natural we think that way because that's effectively this software is a bunch of features. But if we jump to that directly, we will accidentally design user interface. We end up with bloated software. That's how you end up with Microsoft Word, unusable pile of garbage that nobody can use. And so the idea of user goals is, again, it kind of takes these personas and explains what they want to do, but carefully not describing any features of the software. You go, here are the things that these people want to do with this software. And again, we go priority order, and we ignore things and say, okay, this person wants to do this, but we're not going to support that. Important to capture both sides and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're not going to do. And in the end of prioritized list of user goals, you have described the full software without describing any piece of feature or any part of the user interface. Not a single screen, not a single button, not a single function. I always use the same example. People are really tired of this who heard this before, but people do not want to save their document. People want to have the document when they continue working. It's a very clear distinction. If you want to save, you design a save button. If you want to have the document there, you've decided Google Docs, it just exists. And we both know which one we want to use.
I always put in my head, Juhani, I want to go from here to London. I don't live in London, but let's say I want to go to London. I don't actually want to take the train necessarily, or take a car, or any other form of transport. It's now I have to choose which form of transport, but my ultimate goal is to get to London. Mm-hmm. So when you describe it that way, how the tool or the mechanism to achieve the goal is now a separate thing to the goal itself. It's actually surprisingly hard. I find myself fighting with this on a daily basis, trying to define goals without thinking about features. It's actually surprisingly hard to do.
You have to be quite conscious about it,
Yeah.
Your example is very, very good, because if we were in a room and techies would start talking about this problem, they would say, well, I want to have a button so I can look at the train schedules. Okay. Now you define train and you defined a schedule, right? You already kind of jumped 2 steps ahead what the right answer might be. Now, the feature you come up with might be the right answer. I'm not saying the features are bad that you come up with. I'm just saying that you shouldn't be talking about them this way, because you accidentally lock yourself on a path without consciously choosing the path. Okay, absolutely. But now we are on this point. We kind of are starting to understand the big picture. And it's quite important to understand this is not, when you lock these down, that doesn't mean that's the end of it. At any point you can go like, oh, we forgot the persona, or we forgot the goal. So when you're using the software and you say, I would like to have this feature, you would have to go back and say, okay, what is this feature for? Who's going to be using it? And what is the user goal for the feature? If you can't come up with those two solutions, or those two answers, the feature is probably bloat. Now, if you really need it for something, you should be able to describe what you try to do with it. It's not just because I see it in another application, we should have it. Okay, cool, why? And the same thing, by the way, is when your software is already launched and you get a Google Play or Apple App Store review saying, I want to have this feature. What you shouldn't do is implement the feature. What you should do is figure out, why does the user want to have that feature, and design the best possible solution for that user goal. You are the designer, you are the engineer, the users are not your designers. I've been rambling about this for the last 20 years. Anyways, so in our software, in this case, this state, we start to map something like unknown, some problems, some potential issues. But now we start turning towards code. And in this phase, we really very heavily lean on LLMs. In my case, I took the export of this system. I fed a design system by Claude Design, and I did quite comprehensive technical stack definition beginning, because there's a user goals defined that this need to be synced between devices. So, okay, I went through, I want to use KMP, I want to use CMP, Kotlin multi-platform, Compose multi-platform, because I want to have it running on multiple devices. I want to have a server where I can sync across. So I was building this kind of scaffolding without any features first. So here's scaffolding, here's a Kotlin multi-platform setup, all the skills that are needed for coding that, and the servers are running and the messages are going through. At that point, the LLM didn't know what I was building. Only thing it cared is there's a KMP and CMP application that sends messages between different devices. And then I fed in the design system that exported from Claude Design, and then I took an export from this one. There's a one button export here that exports the whole context of the project. And in this case, it goes to as well in Claude, but you can use any agent you want. And there's a skill available that understands Seed framework and understands the tool and understands what everything means. So it knows where to take the right shortcuts to when you're building the seed. And after one button press and a couple of minor tweaks afterwards, this is what I had. This is a Kotlin running on desktop. It runs on my phone. So when I'm trying to kind of test this, I have it running on my phone and my desktop. So here's some ideas that I actually do want to be building. So I hope I don't expose any of our business secrets.
Yeah.
But anyway, these are real use cases I'm working on, and my real half-baked ideas. They are also on my phone and synchronized to my phone, and it's always available for me here. So the same things are. Okay, it's completely impossible to see, but the same things are on my phone. And this is the end goal for my seed, is to get a real software running. Again, this is not a prototype. This is actually sending the messages, synchronizing the state between my devices. I can have the browser, I can have it on desktop, I can have it on my phone. And that allows me to actually understand if it solves the problems that I have. In a different kind of bigger group project, it could be a little bit different. The validation process of the seed is a little bit different. In this case, this is something I built for myself. I'm the ultimate validator. In a real case, where you would build professional software or for real users, you would have to involve real users. You build the seed and you go to an event or get users on board and say, hey, you run a standard usability study or guerrilla usability study in a coffee place or something like that. None of these tools are new. Everybody knows how to do those things, and they don't have to cost a lot of money. But now you have real software. You don't have to say, okay, pretend that this button works, or look at this paper and pretend it's a phone. Those were good tools for the time, but that time is no more. Now you can actually have full software, full run, no fake stuff at all.
Nice.
And what I've been doing here, I kind of not super happy with some of the features. I want to tweak some of them. They don't quite hit the marks yet. So what I will do a couple of iterations here. But this is a good example of the seed framework on one specific detail. There's no accounts here. Everybody who installs the software will be working on the same list of items. And naturally, that's a quite bad thing to do if you deploy that into production.
Right.
But this is not a production software. This is a seed that fully replicates the user experience of one user. You can give it to anybody, clear the list and give it to anybody, and they will have the full experience from end to end, how it would be if it would be working fully. There's no point for me creating OAuth systems here and trying to get this authentication working, because that's not relevant question that we are trying to answer. We know we need to do that once the seed is approved, saying, yes, this is the software we do want to build. We give it to engineers who understand safety, security, data management, GDPR, all of these kind of things have to be taken into account if we put this to Play Store and App Store.
Yeah.
That's no point now. These are problems can be solved when it's built right. Now we understand, hey, this is what we do. You and I can look at this. You and I can use it and say, yes, this is the software we want to build. And we can hand it to Enrique and Ilian, who are very, very good at building proper, good software, and saying, guys, I want an iOS version, an Android version of this application. It's going to go to Play Store, has to comply with all the rules and all of those things. And those guys can figure out exactly how it should be built. They might code it manually, which they're both good at, or they might use LLMs, which they're both good at as well. But that's kind of the next steps in here.
So I think this is a really important piece, because what we tend to do in our industry is we like solving problems, right? But ironically, we quite like solving mechanical problems, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
What OWASP system, how's the OWASP system going to work? We love solving those sort of problems. What we are less good at is solving the problems like, well, what does the user actually want? What's the user's goal? What are they trying to achieve? Can we make sure we've got good product market fit, et cetera, et cetera? Those are goals which I think in the industry we're not super excited about. I think, of course, there are people who spend 24/7 thinking about these things. With LLMs, we can build software super easily. We don't fall into the trap where we just build more software that nobody wants.
Yeah. There's a couple of, this really is just different type of people in this industry. There's people who really want to solve the user problems, like the product problems. And those are the people probably who are reacting quite strongly towards LLMs, saying, this is a good tool, this helps me. I'm one of those people. I've been writing code 25 years professionally, and I don't miss it. I don't want to write code. I want to solve problems users have. I want to solve my problems that I have. But there's a lot of people who want to solve problems of the code. I don't think one or the other is more important. I think when you put those together, it becomes very important. Either one alone is quite useless. Building a half-baked note-taking application and then leaking all the notes to everybody else, that would be a pretty shit thing to do. Nobody wants to use that stuff. However, if you want to have the strongest backend encryption, all of this stuff, but nobody knows how to use it, or it's very painful to write a half-baked note, nobody really uses it. You have to put those both sides together, and you have to work together to solve both problems. Neither is kind of valuable alone, in my opinion.
And so I think it's cool. Thanks for sharing what you've been working on. It's interesting to see that what we've been talking about is becoming not a theoretical process, not a document, but real software used to create real software. I think that's cool. What sort of time did you put into this to build your half-baked? I mean, just to get a sense of how much time these things take.
So there's three different time scales I think I can give you. One of them is I spent quite a long time thinking about what I need.
Yeah.
So I had a quite complete idea in my head when I started putting this stuff together in the seed framework. So I didn't start from zero, but I think that's the case with everybody. So people say, hey, we want the project. They have an idea already, and they've been thinking about it. So that was a long time. That was maybe a month or so. But the time to set up the seed framework and getting the user goals and personas was maybe an afternoon. But you see in the list, it's not really actually reflective of a real project. I'd say a real project would have to be at least 2 days, at least. Otherwise, there's not enough time to think. And if there's a team behind it. So that's kind of the difference. The code, after getting all of the backend stuff, that took about 1 hour. The code took about another hour, so maybe 2 hours for the prototype.
And once you've got let's say got your first version out that you're using, and then you're like, I forgot something, or this idea doesn't really make sense. Let's go back to rethinking about the idea. Are you planning to go back to the seed framework, think about user goals again, tweak the framework, and then how does that flow through to the app? Because that export is that kind of the initial export.
So yes and no. So there's two kind of things that I'm tweaking in the software. Some of the solutions are not matching the goals. So some of the solutions are not solving the goals I already have. So I'm going to improve them. Because it's fully LLM generated, there's kind of features that didn't derive directly from the user goals, or a little bit roundabout way. And I kind of don't like them, so I'm going to clean those up as well. But once I'm in a state where if I say, hey, there's a missing feature, then I do go back to the framework. Now, the skill, LLM skill that is built the software, understands the seed framework and the tooling. So everything that it builds, it also keeps tabs of where this stuff is coming from. So I can import or directly hook the code base to the LLM tooling, and the tooling will understand where we are at the code base. So both the information flows between those systems or actions. It is mostly like a 90% of the information goes seed framework towards the code, but the seed framework understands where we at and where we're going, and that becomes more important once we are ready, because now we have understanding what part of the thing is solving what problem.
My sort of the mental model I have in my head around this is that user goals, the personas and the goals of the users, what I would call the problem space, right, only flows one way, right? It flows from understanding the user through to the software. If there's something wrong in the software, it could be that, yeah, we haven't figured out what the user needs is correctly, and that flows back. But you can keep iterating on features without changing the problem space. It's just the features is the solution space. So sometimes it's the case of, hey, we really did understand the problem correctly. We just didn't find the right way of implementing it or designing it or what have you. That happens sometimes. I personally have seen more often the case that, hey, we've implemented it super well, but actually the problem space wasn't well enough sort of thought through. And so quite late in the project, the problem space becomes an open discussion again. And all of the downstream work to complete the features now kind of gets paused, and we come back and it gets really super messy. But in any case, I think there has to be that kind of flow going back. We don't update the problem space to fit the features, put it that way.
Yep.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. I think what I would like to discuss next time is what we do next. There's quite a bit interesting stuff happening after the seed is validated. Like, how do you extract features? Because now you extract features for implementation and so on. So now we have split the process into two parts, where the engineers who really care about the product problem can work on the product problem, and the engineers who really care about the code problems or the technical problems can work on the technical problems. And we can use the strengths of both of those together and bring them actually together. Once you kind of gone through the personas, the user goals, the definition of the seed, all of these things, you can start talking about features. There's nothing wrong at that point saying, I want to implement this feature, because that's what the technical people do understand. You will extract list of features from the seed and you will implement features. There's nothing wrong with implementing features, because now you have chosen the features consciously with user-centric approach, and now you are implementing features. So you never have to spill the personas or user goals into the implementation to people who don't want to use them. However, you will use them to validate the result of the phase. So the cool thing about user goals is that you can use them as like a mini usability study without any actual users. So you can take a role of the user and say, okay, here's the piece of software. I want to now do this thing that we agreed the software can do. How would you do it? And you can even take a person who doesn't match the persona and take it from another team, somebody who's not been working with the software, and try to say, okay, here's the goal. Can you do that? And you still have value from the first phase of the process, but you don't have to force feed this user-centered design process to engineers who don't care about it.
And here, coming back to something you said earlier about test-driven development, it's kind of ironic, but I think what we're saying here is actually getting the right thinking about product in a product way allows us to test the product. And that arguably that's a massive gap, right? It's actually knowing how to test the product is quite often a bit of a failure. So testing the code without testing the product starts to become a little bit illogical.
Agreed.
Nice.
Cool. I think this might be a good place to wrap up this episode, and I think we can dive to the next phase in the next phase, and maybe we get Ilian and Enrique talk to us as well.
That'll be nice. Great. Cheers, Johanny.
Thanks,
Thanks for sharing. We'll
Thanks.
see you next
Have a
time.
good one. Ciao, ciao.